Tuesday, March 16th. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, so as just said, we're on day 2 of budget. Just a reminder on masks, if you are speaking, yes, it's absolutely fine. We're all spaced accordingly. It's okay to take your mask down while you're speaking and just ask to put it up afterwards, except for department heads that are speaking with us. They don't have to go up and down and up and down. We'll just leave that down and be able to speak comfortably. I'm going to take a moment and say that we spoke yesterday in regards to adding the capital budget specifically to our conversation. I did reach out to the solicitor. I know the solicitor spoke with the clerk today, and we got an email from the clerk saying that we've added that to Thursday's conversation. The specifics are that we could have spoken about it in each department because it's part of the budget. Right. It just didn't seem like it made the most sense in how we've handled things in the past. It felt more advantageous to have it holistic. So we'll have it on Thursday and we'll do it after what has already been pre-scheduled. Okay.
I think Mike is on today. Mike's going to be on Zoom.
Oh, Mike's on Zoom.
Yeah.
Look at that. Oh, hello. How about that? I wasn't
That
expecting.
is the question if he's coming. He's coming that way.
I know. Isn't that wonderful? All right.
Arrived, look.
So we will start then. If we could all go to 404. 404 is town solicitor. Give everybody a moment to get there. Good evening, Mike. How are you?
I am well, and good evening, and I'll soon be fully vaccinated and looking forward to joining you all in person soon. So thank you for the opportunity to present once again. I want to begin, as I have in the past, by really letting you all know that I never take for granted my position here as your solicitor. My team and I look forward to working with you and handling all your legal affairs, hopefully in a way that's satisfactory to you in a competent, professional, and timely manner. And I think our track record proves that. But again, it's always it's just an honor and a pleasure to be able to continue to serve all of you as your solicitor in the town of Bristol. So my budget, or our budget, the legal budget, just a little explanation of the numbers there. We asked for a 2% increase from last year's budget in terms of the solicitor line item, which was 114,610. A 2% increase to that amounts to 116,902. The number you see there of 128,902 bears some explanation. In the past, we have billed our services to the Historic District Commission on an hourly basis, and it came out of a different budget. Maybe Julie can explain, maybe it came from planning. I'm not sure which budget it came from. But this year, Steve and Diane approached us and asked if instead of billing on an hourly basis, if we would consider an annual retainer similar to what we do with the solicitor budget, so that there be predictability for your budgeting as well as predictability for us. We took the last 3 years of hourly billing and basically divided that all out, and it came to an average of $12,000 a month. So what we're proposing with the concurrence of the administrator and Diane is that we just add that, we take that 12,000, we add it to the solicitor's budget. It'll be subtracted out of the hourly billing in another line item. And that's why that number appears larger than what it normally is. As to the other 2 line items, court costs and litigation, we're just keeping those right where they are. Our recommendation or our request is that we just keep them right where they are.
So Mike, we did have prior conversation yesterday that included exactly some of that, talking about moving line items away from HDCs, such and so forth. So that is certainly something that we've talked about, but I'm gonna just open right up to the council. What questions do we have?
I'm just confused. I'm confused a little bit, Mike, because the number we have is 128,902.
Correct.
And you said that it was 12,000 a month that you were, it's the average?
Oh, no. $1,000 a month, it's a 12,000 annually.
Okay, right, okay, that's what I thought. Okay, but that,
Yes.
to clarify, okay, thank you.
Oh, no, although I'd love that, I would never do that.
I was like, those numbers don't add up, and
Thank you, but no, right? So-
And so for the, Mike, the hours, by the way, do a great job. Thank you for all your work. I was just curious, when you, for the hourly rates for the HTC, if it does go over, are you going to bill additional, or is it like?
No, we will not bill additionally, Tim. We are committed to this number. Just like in our solicitor budget, we do not bill if the hours go over. So this is what it is. That budget will not be exceeded.
What other questions? No other questions? Mike, that's in keeping, excuse me, this is Nathan. That's what you see in other communities too. It comes to mind that Warren kind of has a cap on those things, maybe without litigation. Would that be true?
Yeah, without litigation, that is true. In several of our communities, we have these hybrid type arrangements where for general services, meaning everything from attending planning, zoning, and now HDC, doing police prosecutions, coming to council meetings, doing all the day-to-day work, all of that is capped. And that is what's presented in this budget. The litigation budget, although it's 50,000, and I'm sure Julie could fill you in, I don't think we're anywhere near that 50,000 because that's absolutely by the hour. And there hasn't been a lot of litigation in Bristol, thankfully, so hasn't really been a big issue.
Julie, can you speak to that real quick?
Yes. Fiscal year to date, we've spent about 17,500 this year. And going back just the last to fiscal 20, we actually did spend about 58,000 and 88,000. So this is one of those lines that can vary, but like the solicitor said, we are tracking very well this year. Don't see a need to raise it. It is a little bit unpredictable, but those are the territory.
but just to be clear, for the record, I mean, he always tells us what he thinks it's gonna cost, and we always usually approve if we have big litigation, am I correct?
Yes, we just don't have, we don't know what's coming
Right.
down the pike, so
Right,
it's hard
right,
to
right,
budget
right.
for, yeah.
What else for the solicitor?
I think things are trending in the right direction, so.
Agreed? Okay. Mike, anything for us before you go?
I'm good, unless there are any other questions. Again, thank you again for the privilege to serve you all.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Have a great night.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
So that was 404. So we're going to move to 603, which is Public Works. And Mr. Chris Barella is going to be presenting for DPW Director. Welcome, Chris.
Good evening.
How are you?
Before I begin, I would just like to say that it's truly an honor to be back in Bristol. I really haven't had a chance to meet with most of you since I've been here because of COVID, but you know, if you had told me 2 years ago when I left the city of East Providence that I'd be back in Bristol and I'd be a DPW director, I'd kind of like, but it's truly been an honor. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity.
I got to tell you, Chris, we're hearing massive positive feedback, not only from the residents, but from your coworkers, from the administrator. My personal experiences working with you have been extremely positive. Response times, kind of the no nonsense and simple, quick to the point, and how do we need to take care of this approach has not gone unnoticed by all
I
of us.
really appreciate that. Thank you.
So we've come a long way from playground supervisor.
We have. My lifeguard days are long going. However, who knows?
They've done you well, sir. They've done you well.
Those were good days, though.
So on the previous budgets, what we've done is we've asked the department heads to kind of maybe highlight what they'd like us to focus on.
if there's only a few things, we're not going to go through line by line. I would ask that if you'd like us to focus on anything in particular, point that out. Once that's done, I'll open it up to questions to the council.
Thank you, sir. So if you notice, we've actually reduced the budget from last year. Most of that is attributed to something that the administrator and I have been working on almost since I got here. And that's proposing the acquisition of the hauling operation, which we have subbed out to a private contractor for a long time. And the proposal I made was to terminate. His contract expires in July, but there's an opportunity to renew it for 2 more years. I've proposed that we not renew his contract on July 7th and instead assign those duties to the DPW.
Chris, could you take a couple of seconds and I know this went out to bid before, but could you just share with this council and the public, when you say hauling, what are you speaking of and what are you proposing as a change?
Okay, so basically, as everyone knows, we do curbside pickup. We also have a transfer station where the trash is brought into there, it's separated through, and then at some point, that trash all has to find its way to Johnston. It either goes to the landfill or it goes to the MRF, which is where the recycling goes. And there are other special pickups too, like metal and that we trade in. But my point is, all of that trash that we deposit there has to be brought to Johnston. So typically and actually you know more than I would how long it's been this way, but my understanding is it's been many, many years we've employed a hauler. As I looked at this operation, I just don't see any reason we can't do this cheaper and with the accountability of Bristol supervisors, work being done by Bristol workers under the watch of the town administrator and the town council. I just don't think we should be subbing out this operation. It's almost routine that we're bogged down because those boxes are full. The people who work up there we have to call this guy, he hasn't come. There's been times where there's been certain complaints that I'm just not comfortable with. I just think we can do it cheaper. There is a significant fiscal impact to taking this over. But as I explained to the administrator, once we absorb and disperse that initial fiscal impact, I see no reason we can't save a lot of money. And in fact, if you look at this budget, one of the reasons that we're 102,000 or 103,000 under last year's, I believe.
103, yeah.
103 is because, and we've accounted for most of this, we've kicked up the fuel cost a little bit. It's going to be a work in progress at first, but we've accounted for the more maintenance. The proposal calls for 1 new body, which again is 1 more Bristol worker, but I just see no reason we can't do it cheaper, more efficient, and with 100% accountability. So everything from efficiency of that operation to cost to, the accounting of it, because it would be so much easier to analyze what we're doing and everything else if we took this over ourselves.
Chris, what do we, and if not Julie and the administrator, all of us, speak to how long is it going to take us to get to 0 and then see a savings? So the initial cap cost obviously is going to be expensive, but.
Correct. So initially, I would propose to the administrator that we purchase a roll-off truck with a body, which could go anywhere from 180 to 200,000. I would want a new truck. And then I would also want a backup roll-off truck, because I think there's going to be a lot of times when we may have to send a second truck to make some runs and to service the first, because this truck cannot stop. It's like our trash trucks.
And just for clarity, roll-off means the 30-yard big dumpster, it'll put one of those on there and bring it up to
Correct.
Johnston.
Roll-off as opposed to trash truck.
Thank
So a roll-off will pick up those boxes after they're either compacted at the transfer station or the special pickups, and it would take it to Johnston. So I think the initial cost would be significant. We're talking about between 180 and 200,000 for a new truck. We're talking about, I think the administrator has asked that we keep it down to about 90,000 for a backup truck. And we're thinking anywhere from 80 to 90,000 for the boxes, because this vendor, all those, when I say boxes, I'm referring to dumpsters, all except the closed compactor boxes belong to him. So we're thinking between 80 and 90,000 for those. And from there, The only cost that I see increased is one more position on the DPW. We're talking about a total compensatory package of, I think Julie was at about 85,000. And that's to pay this new position at a rate that would be, I could count on more accountability and for this is kind of an important role. So that's about what we're looking at. Then you're just looking at the increase in fuel and maintenance, because we already pay all the tipping fees. We already pay, there are no tolls anyway, but we pay for everything. That's the only thing he does for us. Right now, his bid is at $276 a year. You know, he doesn't always come to that because we pay him by the pull, but that's what we account and you know, earmark for his services. I just don't know how we don't do this cheaper. And again, you're talking about pretty quickly, we can close that gap and pay for those items that we purchase.
Julie?
You'll notice in the budget this year, in the operating budget, that there's a pretty significant decrease in transfer station operations. So what we've done in this budget is capture the hauling as operating, and then those new pieces of equipment that Director Perella was just speaking of, we will be, we could be purchasing with the equipment piece of our bond issue, that we have both reimbursement resolutions on upcoming bonds, and we also have bonds on hand which have equipment pieces to them. So included in this budget that you'll see and the capital budget, those two things do include the hauling and everything needed to bring the hauling in-house.
Julie, please.
I was gonna say, how much did you say was per year? 276,000?
276,000, Councilwoman, is what we appropriate. Sometimes he's a little under that. He could be over, but we pay him by the pull. So every time he pulls a box and different kinds of hauling that he does, recycling pays more than trash. And so we pay him by the pull.
So is this questions from us now, or is this, are you, done? Are you,
I think,
you have to finish your presentation, or
Yeah.
is this question?
I would, why don't we, let Chris, why don't you go through the rest of what you wanted to
Okay.
hit as salient points, and then we'll open it up.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just,
course.
before we go on to the next line item, I just a few points I'd like to add to the director's support for this. To be clear, we pay typically up to approximately $250,000. An employee is about $85,000. We have about 180, 190 to absorb into expenses for the cost of the equipment. We don't typically buy them outright. We finance them at a very low interest. So we think right away, we're going to save money in the swelling operation. But what I like most about it is the efficiency of it. Right now, as the director said, we have to wait for the hauler to come. He comes at odd times. And so what that's done for the transfer station, it's made it somewhat unorganized. There are containers that are full for periods of time. We're at his mercy to come and swap them out. But the biggest benefit to this, to me, is if you take a ride up there, you'll see a corralled area where our recycling goes. So the recycling trucks collect your recycling curbside. We bring them to the transfer station. We put them in that corralled area. They're dumped in there. Quite frankly, they blow around on a windy day. We're going to be real careful how that's done. Then we have to send an operator up there with the loader to load the recycling into a truck so that it can then be brought up to the transfer station. Our transfer building has 2 stalls right now for 2 compactors. We have the ability to run 2 compactors, one for trash and one for recycling. Right now, we have to have them both for trash because we have to wait for the hauler to get there to swap them out when one of them fills up. So we're going to use our transfer building bays, one for trash, one for recycling. So we're eliminating that whole process of an operator going up there every day, and then the ground maintenance crews picking up the litter that blows throughout the property and elsewhere. So it's going to really streamline this process. And we looked into it. We can compact both trash and recycling. And when one of them fills up, we have our own personnel that are trained. We have the equipment. We can pull the compactor box out and put a new compactor box in. So we'll be able to run a much cleaner facility, and we think it'll be less labor intensive this way. And again, we do believe that we can save money. We're not looking to increase the size of the department. We're fine where we are. But by taking this process over, we don't know how we could lose money at this point. So
Okay.
I'm really in support of the director's.
And additionally to what the administrator said, that takes its toll on the machine too. We have a landfill machine, a backhoe that's up there. And a lot of times, because we don't compact recycling, he literally has to pound and pound with the bucket of the backhoe, because recycling is much lighter. It just takes up a lot of room. So he has to bang it. It's a lot of wear and tear on that machine. It takes a beating anyway, because it's a corrosive environment, but so as well as what the administrator said, you're also talking about a lot less wear and tear on at least the backhoe that works up there. So I think it's just a win-win all around.
Okay, so let's put a pin on that one, keep going through, and because we will, I'm sure there's questions.
So the rest of the budget, you notice there's a couple of.
You
I'm
sure?
sorry.
Go ahead, Chris. Did you, I'll tell you what, while you're on your point, please, go ahead.
If you don't mind,
Sure.
just a point of clarification. So we're talking about trash and recycling, correct?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
We're talking about everything up there, even the
Right.
special waste, the steel, everything.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
So in the budget, there are some slight increases. Some are a little higher than others, but grounds maintenance was a little bit higher. That's basically what we pay Day Ponce Landscaping for snow removal, for grass cutting, etc. We don't, through DPW, put a lot of invoices through there, but I think this is the last year of that contract, and I know the administrator has already directed me to stop looking at it and getting ready for a new one, what we want to add, subtract, etc. The other one that I had to increase was a boot allowance, and basically the contract allows for the steel workers to get a second pair of boots if they wear out the first. And we're seeing an increase in those that are requesting that second pair. So this increase basically covers us for if 50% of them request the second pair of boots. So that's the only increase there. The computer line item, I'm asking for a little bit of extra money, and the only reason is we need to bring in some databases there. It's almost impossible to retrieve. We need to be able to retrieve, analyze, do comparative analysis of what we're doing there. It's painstaking. And to watch those two girls, what they have to go through to retrieve data, I need to be able to retrieve it much quicker, much more efficient. And there are some small, and same thing with asset management, with all the tools. I want serial numbers entered. And there's some good programs, and I don't think you need to spend an awful lot on it. So I've increased that budget just a little bit, just so that we could bring some of those in. And that's why you'll see the increase there. Building maintenance, there's some things that have long been ignored there. That's a very corrosive environment. Everything in that parking lot, from every piece of equipment, the garage doors, just because of all the salt in there, they're all rotted. So I've included a little bit more in building maintenance. We actually did some good projects there with the line item we had, but I'm asking for a little bit more money to work on that. I'm asking for a little bit more in motor vehicle maintenance, and that's because it's an aging fleet. There's an awful lot of things down there that need a lot of maintenance. We're kind of like, I know it's in the queue coming, so even though it doesn't look too bad presently, I know that there's some big projects in the queue. So I'm asking for just a little bit more with maintenance, plus with the two new trucks. I mean, with the new truck and the used truck, there's gonna be maintenance there too, even if it's just oil changes. Oil changes on those big trucks are extremely expensive, so I've
Chris,
increased that a little bit.
I'll just take a second and say, when you say a little bit, so motor vehicle maintenance, you're proposing a $5,000 increase to that line item.
Correct.
And then you said building maintenance, you were proposing a $2,500 increase to that.
Correct.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Vehicle and gas, obviously with the new trucks, and that also includes DEF fluid. Telephone, I'm increasing slightly, and the only reason there is we put in Wi-Fi. They didn't have Wi-Fi in the building, and I mean, that was crippling. So we put that in. That takes a little bit more bandwidth. Also, I issued smartphones to the foreman so we can make it much more efficient to take pictures of scenes and text. That uses a little bit more. the camera system, the security system that they use. And that's important because not for daily monitoring, but when you have industrial accidents, which we have, or issues, it's nice to be able to go back and be able to investigate those incidents. We need some more bandwidth because it's just a very slow, haphazard way to do it. The other thing is security cameras, and that's for the same reason. I've increased it only for this year, and it's a decent increase. It's by 2,500, and the reason is I don't see any reason we need to use cops to monitor these. So to monitor our security system, cops costs probably, I want to say 400, almost 500 a month. So I brought Telly in that does the system that we use. And we completely disconnected cops to see if it would work, and I don't see that we need it. So that could be a savings of almost $500 a month forever. But again, it just takes its toll on the bandwidth. It's just, I mean, we can't even, there are times when, you know, the girls especially, we just can't even bring things up. So anyway, we increased it there. The street light repair was increased. Actually, the administrator brought that up. So we did need to increase that a little bit for the work we're doing on the street lights. And other than that, there were some decreases, but those were the only increases that we've asked for.
Great. Council,
I
Mary?
have a few questions. I talk a lot. You may have gathered on one of my, on some of the Zoom meetings. I think I'm certainly okay with doing the project in-house and going back and trying that. But I think the reason we got rid of it probably was because it was costing so much money in terms of time and the trucks and everything else of having our people out. Now with the recycling and with the new trash barrels that we have, I'm sure you're saving a lot of time and a lot of staff time. So it may be worth giving it another try. But I'm just curious, do you have any idea how many runs a week you would be going, because you can be taking everything? And then also, how often does the trash and recycling get picked up now by the hauler? So if you were to take those two, make one recycling, one trash, would you be going every day then, or every other day, or 2 times a day, or how would that work?
So I'm estimating we need to make 3 runs a day, thereabouts. Now, you know, sometimes it could be more, sometimes it could be less. 3, I think, is very reasonable for the hauler. I think we can do that very efficiently. But just to give you an idea of, if you look at the bid, typically he's talking about 600 loads total in the year of municipal solid waste, 228 of special waste, 20 loads. I have a rundown that I can get for you.
Chris, are you referencing something that's in our budget
I'm
packet?
referencing what's in the contract bid.
Thank you.
So it's actually bid number 933, which we can reference at any time.
Julie,
gives you
Mr.
an
Administrator,
estimate.
could you get a copy of that just as a reference point, since it's being brought up to the council, not today, but if we could just have that as part of that?
Yes.
Thank you.
And that's just an overview in the bid. Again, it doesn't mean, you know, it's an estimate that we make when they bid for this job. But I think 3 loads a day, Councilwoman, will be ample. And because we're gonna have a second truck, and this is the thing, those are not, those are all Class B commercial drivers needed for these trucks. So the only time it's Class A is if it's a trailer. We don't have that. So basically, everyone in that building has a CDL. Every single person will be trained to use this. So because we're gonna have 2 trucks, if we're behind, then someone else will be assigned to this operation. So they'll be trained and ready to go. And I just think that that place will finally efficiently move trash and recycling in and out. And what the administrator articulated about the recycling being compacted, typically they talk about a trailer, a 96 cubic foot trailer, if you read the bid contract, which is a big trailer.
Is that a 40 foot? Is that generally what that is? A 40-foot trailer?
Yard, I'm
Okay.
sorry, yard. Yeah, that's a big one. That's much bigger than any dumpster you could ever get.
Got it.
So when they reference that 96 cubic yard trailer, he subs that out to some other person, Foley, to do. But they don't even use that big trailer anymore. But the point was, it wasn't a lot of weight, and you had to get all of that there. By putting that in the compactor box, you should be able to get a lot more recycling into a closed box, which I think will reduce the amount of runs we have to make. So I'm confident if the question is that, can we do this? There's no question we can do it more efficiently. And is in terms of the manpower, I think we're fine, and we did. I'm glad you referenced the automated trash and recycle pickup. I would never have believed, when I first came in February, which was my original debut here, just to help out with that contract, I didn't even think it would be as efficient and effective as it has been, because the absenteeism, the on the job injuries, zero. And, that was a very difficult, strenuous job, and they did it in all weather. So I think, you didn't have to be completely sick to say to yourself, I just, some of them, I just don't, there were times where I don't think they felt like they could do it. It was that difficult physically. You don't see it anymore. The absenteeism it's clean, it's more, the sanitation process is much better. They're not exposed to liquids flying everywhere, so, and we have safe, so that's more efficient. And by the way, one other thing I should note, and I just kind of forgot, part of this bid includes, I want to say 3, 4, maybe 5, I don't know if you can help me with that, private condos that we actually do recycling for, and that was a situation that was put in a long time ago. We're prepared to do that as well. We're going to add those particular places to our normal recycling routes, and I think we have time. We've analyzed it, and I think we have time to do that too. So that's another part of this. But I think that we're gonna, I don't see anybody getting injured with this. It's not bulwark. It's also gonna save, like I said, even the boxes when they come out of the compactor rooms, it's gonna have to be pulled with a backhoe. This truck's gonna hook them, pull them, load them, and go.
So is this like, you just raised another question for me, and that was when you said it's going to be compacted in Bristol?
Yep.
Does that give us any potential problems when it gets to the recycling center? In terms of, like, how sometimes they'll throw stuff out, or they, you can't really go through if your recycling is dirty. I don't know what the correct word is. I mean, having it all compacted like that, we have more chances of being thrown out that way, or?
Well, we've been very lucky, and I think it's because of the job that the recycle trucks do. We never have an issue, but we do deny some recycling. In fact, one of the complaints that is most routine is, well, why didn't, you guys left it behind, that's not right, and people get upset, but they're very good about it. Like, if there's something in that recycle that they see when the camera looks down at it, they won't take it. So we're pretty good about that, but the MRF, where we do our recycling in Johnston, has no problem with compacting it. But again, we'll have to work all that out, work it through. But we'll know before it gets to that compactor what's in there, just like we do now. Because we just don't have that issue. They're pretty good about knowing what they can and can't take. And every time they leave it behind, they call it in, we take which is another reason I want databases. They take it and they put it down, so when the complaints come in, we're able to reference those, but they're all handwritten on a notebook, so. But we're able to go back and explain to the people, so it's also a learning experience. It's not just too bad, you didn't do the recycling right, you don't get it picked up. We also explain to them what was in there, why it was there. So I don't think that will be a problem, but if it is, we're prepared to go, just in a box of recycling like we're doing now. But with everything we've talked about with Johnston, I think we're fine with compacting it. And the change in that, like the administrator said, I think it'll make so much cleaner and environment up there, and a lot less man hours that we have to do.
Chris, to Mary's point, I believe, if I'm remembering it correctly, is that the hauling was more expensive because we didn't do it with a roll-off. We did it with the trucks themselves. So a full load in a trash truck would drive that truck up to the landfill, dump it, and come back again. This is proposing, obviously, using dumpsters and a particular truck that's designed for highway hauling. So the combination of both should make a huge difference, at least my understanding.
So it takes some wear and tear off our regular trucks.
Exactly. So our trucks are staying in Bristol, and then the truck that brings what we've collected goes up. Please correct me if I'm
You're absolutely
wrong.
right.
Okay.
The only time we do send trucks there is a couple of times a week, I think. I'd have to check. We send the recycle trucks there, and the only reason we do that directly to the MRF is because those Macs need to get up on a highway speed in order to
Oh,
to
diesel.
redo
right?
all the
Oh, that's right.
regen. And
Wow.
so then that's basically, we do it because we want to. So that's the reason they do it. But other than that, you're absolutely right. We don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to send a crew all the way out there, and it's much more efficient.
I just had one other quick question, and it's not, I'm not even sure if it's your budget, if it got moved to your budget, or if it got moved to, it's still in Parks and Rec, but one of the things that I've had a long time interest in are the solar compact trash bins around town, particularly in certain areas in the summer, when it gets really messy looking on the weekends. I know sometimes we try our best to get them picked up, but you know, you can think sometimes like in front of the ice cream store, things like that, it's kind of messy. And I know they're kind of expensive, but I noticed even Pawtucket has put them in terms of, I think they're called fat bellies or something like that. And I was wondering if that is anything you've given any thought to in certain locations.
So I think Sarah Klein, Recreation Director, has actually looked into, I think those are her, will assist picking them up. At times, we've taken those duties to empty them for her. But that's her department, but we have discussed it, you know, quite a while ago, but we have discussed like, you know, what would be nice looking, but also efficient to empty. So.
I'll ask her then again about it as well.
Big bellies. Big bellies.
Oh, big bellies, yeah, I know, they're like.
I looked it up.
Yeah, I know, I saw them on a few, I brought it up to Diane Williamson, we brought it up before, but, you know.
They're actually pretty slick because they run on solar and they'll send you a
Right.
signal when it's full.
Yeah,
So if you're
Yeah.
independent, you know, the one in Independence Park, that's always,
Yeah.
Always full.
I feel like every summer I go
No,
down,
they
it's
are,
jammed.
yeah.
Every
And that's
every
why-
Sunday it's overflowing.
yeah,
They
Yeah.
are.
even if there's a
And-
few of them that we could put into the mix, I mean, they may be, I think they're several $1,000s, I don't know if it's 5,000 each or something, but, well, you've done a great job presenting this, and I can't believe that you have no software and that you didn't have Wi-Fi until recently in your building.
No, I mean, we have, you know, we had it from our workstations, but just no Wi-Fi. When you have a meeting or someone's in there, it's just, you have to work off cell or it's just extremely haphazard, so. So it's in there, but it did make a big difference, but we just have to
Yeah.
get some databases and.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Chris, just had a couple questions in regards to the arborist that we have, Carlos.
Yep.
I was just curious, is there any chance of bringing that in-house? I mean, you talk about the hauler and I like where you're going with that. I was just curious as far as that going on with Saraceno, and I'm just thinking of other ways we could
Oh,
save as well within the
absolutely.
department.
And that's one of the things we're the proudest of is the tree crews. They have done a spectacular, we're doing more tree work than we've ever done. In fact, I just spent quite a bit of money to get them some new protective gear. Because some hard hats that are more geared for that with some communications in them. But we worked out a deal with the town of Warren. And what we did is we barter a sweeper that we can spare with a tree truck that they have, because we'd never be able to do the work we've done. And, you know, with the cooperation of Warren DPW, who have been great, we worked very well together. We've been able to use their tree truck quite a bit. And because of that, we have done an incredible amount of tree work. And I mean, we have a very talented tree cutter. And I think the only limit to how much we do is maybe another tree truck and another chipper that we wouldn't have to borrow. But, you know, once those come, I can guarantee you that so long as we can keep the arborist here, which I think we can do, and the tree crew that goes with, we usually send the same people out, because there's also another certified arborist who goes out and assists. But so he's very skilled with chainsaw, and I mean, we have really done a lot. Like I said, I bought him some new ropes and some new protective gear, because the only limit to what they do is another truck and maybe more personnel, but we really have offset that tree budget with some of the work that they do there.
That's great.
Mr. Minister?
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Sweeney, for mentioning that. We did, one of the things we, hopefully we would have gotten to it, but we did add an arborist position. So we didn't increase the positions, we changed the title, and there was a significant, a minor increase in salary, but the amount of money we're saving using our in-house arborist under the oversight of the tree warden, to be honest, right now, we're using exclusively town employees to do tree work right
That's
now.
amazing. That's great.
As we've talked about before, the tree canopy is aged, and for some reason, the last few years, last 5 years at least, we've had a really huge increase in requests for tree trimming and removals and inspections. So right now, it's exclusively DPW with the Warren bucket truck that's out.
No, it's exciting. I think that's a good direction to think about. I don't know, Julie, if that's even an option right now, but it's something we can hopefully phase in. Sounds like it would be and again, like the hauler, another efficiency in the department, I was, a lot of towns recently they're moving over to reducing organic waste out of your trash to reduce the trash. And I know like the city of Orlando has done a fantastic job at this. And they've reduced their trash quite a bit because 40% is organic. Do you see down the line in your line of work? I know you're in the devil's in the details. Is that something that maybe we could look into down the road, or with the hauler and separating and getting to that point? Because I know tipping fees are just going to continue to go through the roof. So we're going to continue to be always paying big bucks to get our trash removed. And then when that Johnson landfill closes, that's what I'm worried about most. Then we're really up the creek. I don't know where we're going to send it from there. So
It really
just wanted
is.
to pick your brain on that.
It really is a big thing to think about. Is trash is a serious issue. I mean, internationally, we're just running out of room to put it. So, and that's why I think there's gonna be more grant opportunities, which hopefully we can capitalize on. And I mean, we compost, WPC compost, which not every city or town does, which is good. But in terms of composting, what you're referring to, so we looked up the other day because we were discussing the same topic. The administrator asked us to follow up with Mr. Moretti on a composting program. And I know that's starting small, but just to gauge the interest. But we also looked up some composting home boxes that are available through the central landfill. And if people wanted to compost at home and they wanted to buy that box from the center, and they're pretty good boxes, they can get them for 1/3 the price if they buy them through the municipalities. So if we bought some of those and sold them, they're actually, now, we don't have instruction or any of that yet, but if people are interested, that it is kind of a nice thing to have available at the Public Works Department. So we just looked that up. And like I said, it's much cheaper and they're very, very good boxes. But I think that you're gonna see that, and more people are using them for their gardens and, looking for uses for it. So something has to give somewhere.
Right. And how are the trucks right now? Are they?
So the trucks, and I'll save some of this for capital, but one of the first things as I start, and again, I'm still familiarizing myself with this. It's only been a few months, but the first thing I identified as a need was a trash truck. Because those automated trucks, I mean, they never stop. They go out every single day and there's no spare truck. And even though they're new, and the bodies that were purchased with those, the company that makes those, they really are a great body. Mack makes a good truck. LeBrie, who makes the bodies, is really, really good, but they just require work. I mean, they never stop. There's hydraulic hoses, so if we need to service one, and it has to go to Mack, which we have an unbelievably talented group of mechanics. I've never seen any that good, to be honest with you. And they do their best, but we have to keep them after hours to service it, because unless it's something where it can't go out at all. And if it does that, I mean, now you're talking about putting an older truck out there and having to bring people back and laborers. And so those trucks have been as advertised. I mean, that whole program has been spectacular. It really has changed everything about that department and the service we provide. But we need another one badly, because, we take one out of service and do the brakes and the PTO and, you just have to service it. So, and the administrator has already worked on that. So is Julie. So we'll save that for when we do capital, but those trucks have been every bit as, that whole program's every bit as advertised. It really has.
And with everybody working at home is much more. I mean, you've probably seeing trash go up quite a bit. Has there been a trend more for the 95-gallon bins? I hope not, but.
Well, most of the.
I'm hoping, they're going 35, but are we stabilizing or what's going on there?
Well, Director McBride and I at the time discussed this when it first happened, and we looked into this. And what I anticipated was, at first, everyone's gonna want everyone's gonna want a 95, oh my God, there's not enough room. But everything we researched said that you have to make the people live with a 65 for at least a month. So we told everybody who called, we're not doing anything for at least 30 days, maybe 60, to see how it goes. And I want to tell you, maybe 1/8 of those people actually still needed a bigger one or another one. Some people we've had to use some discretion with because they just can't live within the 65. But most people have reduced their trash into a 65. There was a lot of people wanted the 35s, and some of those people, I mean, it's been life-changing for some of them. There have been some of them who said, you know, it's easy to put out, but I just can't fit everything in it. But for the most part, the people who really needed those, it was a lifesaver. But I would say if they weren't happy with the 65, most of the requests by far are for the 95s. So.
Thank you for getting the 35s out, because that was,
You go
you know,
first.
originally taking a while, and people were getting really nervous as the winter was approaching.
Yeah,
But,
I
yeah,
mean, for someone who can't
Yeah.
get their trash out, that's a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
because,
yeah, they're heavy, you know, the regular ones are heavy.
Tony?
Okay, thank you. First of all, I have to agree 100% with you, maybe 110% about the trash, about the program. I can tell you, I'm an early walker in the morning, and I remember those rainy days when we had the small bands. I mean, there was trash everywhere. Now, you hardly see a piece of trash flying. Anyway, occasionally, some of them are pretty light, they get blown over, but for the most part, they still contain the trash or the recycling. So it's been wonderful to see. I mean, it has made a world of a difference, you know, trash-wise around town, as well as, you know, just the safety. And I agree 100% in terms of the employees and the injuries. You know, certainly that was always one of the big things, was the changer right there. Now, just quick, I know at one time there was quite a bit of stuff around the yard down there. Have we moved some of that stuff? I know we plan to expand the building to accommodate for more in space for to protect the vehicles. But at one time there was quite a bit of stuff in that yard that probably could be, you know, I know Gov Deals is a good place. Maybe for, you know, we have somebody else here that we deal with, but they do a great job moving those items. You know, I know I've done that in LC, and it's worked out beautifully. They've moved many of those things, very little cost, you know, so.
So to answer your question is, some of it has been moved, but there's still an awful lot to move. And one of the things we did was have the fire department take some pictures, some bird's eye view from a drone. And just because I wanted to see, it's hard to wrap your head around exactly how the shape of this lot, how it sits next to that vacant lot. It's if you haven't been here all this time, it's kind of hard to. So I wanted to get some overhead views. Also wanted to see what's where. So I can tell you that we've cleaned some of it up, but a lot of it will, when we get this mechanics garage, it looks like we're gonna be kind of locked into putting it on that property somehow, which is not gonna be easy, but we're gonna have to move the salt shed, and when we do, we've already got a plan, and I've already told them that every single thing, every piece of metal that can be scrapped, and there are a ton of plows there, you know, and they still, like, at first, I'm like, I want this going, this going. When you watch them, they actually go out and they cannibalize some of this stuff, and they do use the parts, they use some of these things, but when we put this garage in, which I'm really hoping we get, we'll be able to, we have no choice. That yard's gonna have to be completely cleaned out. We'll have to have it surveyed, and even some of the material piles are gonna have to be moved. But in terms of those vehicles, the administrator, I mean, he's probably called me 5 times already and asked when I'm gonna move these things out. And we're in progress now, but we do have a few more of those to move out. And some of them are still serviceable for someone who wants to buy it on Gov Deals.
Mhm.
So we're in the process of that. I'd like to tell you it was done, but we're still.
When you
working.
say some things, what is back there?
So we have an old bucket truck,
Okay.
which, you know, right up until we got the new one a few years ago, it's serviceable, it works, but it can't be inspected the bucket part. So for someone who maybe has a place where they're not gonna put a bunch of employees in it, but needs it for some work, mechanically, it runs great. There's no rot on it. It's just that the bushings and things, it's just not safe that you wanna put into service. We also have a bulldozer that when you look at it, you say, this piece of rust, but then immediately the mechanics point out that it's got extremely low hours. It needs tracks, which is a significant investment, probably $10,000. But for someone who wants to invest in that, it's a pretty decent machine. We have no use for that we want to spend that money on. So those are the things that the administrators asked me multiple times to move on gov deals, and we're in the process of doing that.
If I may, the bucket truck was on, but the minimum bid was not met, so we just need to relist that. And
Maybe lower our
I know there's, if
expectations.
you go up to the transfer station, in fact, the director spoke to our chief mechanic there. We're looking to make a snow plow out of the Western Star, which is a 98, but it was totally rebuilt. So we're gonna make, that's a summer project. So we are on the, we would like to get some money if we can for some of our surplus older equipment, but it is a director had a few other, he's working on road paving right now and some other projects, but I even offered some of Chief Lynch's personnel to him last week to get rid of some of the old trucks, but he says, no, we're gonna do it. But, I know it's on his list. Aaron?
Yeah, this is Aaron. Well, I guess I don't have to.
No,
say
you
that
don't.
because
Yeah,
of
you're on.
the videos. So, thanks for being here today. And, I think what you've talked about really demonstrates some really creative thinking about how you can, make some more efficient processes by, maybe adding a piece of equipment that might add to savings that might eventually pay for, some of these facilities later on down the road and lower some of the costs for maintenance and the hydraulics and everything like that. And so I see like the bigger picture here and how all of this is kind of fitting together. And like I said, I think it's some pretty creative thinking. How long do the trucks last? Like the hauling trucks that will have to go to the Johnson landfill? And then I was also kind of curious if, you may have gotten some inspiration from maybe other towns who have maybe done something similar or something like that.
So that's a good question, and I didn't touch on that in the beginning, but there are very few municipalities that pick up their own trash. We do, but yet there are also very few municipalities that have transfer stations that don't haul their own trash. So it seems odd, but like Barrington, Warren, they have transfer stations and they haul their own. So, and yet they don't have curbside, they don't do their own trash pickup. So I think it's interesting how, we do the part of it that nobody does, but then the part that most people do, we don't do. And that seems to me to be the easier part to do. So yeah, other municipalities, and I love the idea of having our people pick up the trash, by the way, because this might be the police side of me coming out, but you're talking about trash trucks go to every road in Bristol. Roads that a lot of us don't even know they're there. Some of these roads way off by themselves. You're sending Bristol employees, Bristol supervisors overseeing it, town hall having to say. It's just a much safer, better way to do business, I think. And it's been efficient. And it's worked well. So, we're in for it for a penny. Let's be in for it for the pound and do it all ourselves. 100%. Then when there's a problem, it comes right back to the DPW to fix it, correct it, make it more efficient. Not economical isn't always the way to go, but efficient is. So that's when the administrator tells the director, and I think it's all accountable here. It begins and ends here. So like I said, first of all, I think it's cheaper and it's going to save money, but I think there's a lot of other reasons that we do it.
And then the trucks, they have like a 20-year life or.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. So the life expectancy. So I came from, like I said, I worked for a municipality for 30 years. And, I was at the central garage a lot. I would never saw some stuff here that they keep working. And some of it is, I looked at a couple of those Freightliners and I'm like, how? So I do spend a lot of time in the garage and the fabricating that they do. There are some extremely talented mechanics back there, and they do a lot more than just mechanic work, but they keep these things going 15, 20 years. Look at the years on some of these things. And they work, like that Western Star that the administrator's talking about, a Packer. We get that back. I mean, they love that truck. Oh, that's got, a new transmission, a new engine. We're gonna get that back. The plan is they wanna cut the chassis, move the axle up so it's shorter, put a sander on that, and that thing will probably be used for another 10 years, especially if it's used for sanding. But so the trucks, the new trucks we're talking about, we discussed this, the head mechanic and I just the other day, we'll get at least 10, 12 years out of them. Now, again, how expensive they'll be at that point in time remains to be seen. It's like the backhoes. We typically keep those for 12, maybe 13 years, but once they hit that 6 or 7 year mark, like the one that the administrator is working with us on replacing, it's just so expensive to keep it going. And when you look at the percentage we'll spend just in parts on that, and it's years 8, 9, 10, 11, it's almost like not worth it anymore. So I think those trucks, I have every expectation we'll get a minimum of 10 years out of them. The roll-off trucks, I think we'll get 10 to 12 maybe. Because again, I know the maintenance they do on them, they're pretty good. So.
Anything else from the council?
I just had one other quick.
Please.
I'm sorry. So just to follow up on your, one of the saving graces we've always had are these really talented mechanics that have, as you said, cannibalized and just, they've kept stuff on the road with like patching it up for years and years and years and years. I've been in the council for a long time, and it's always been a real strength. I have one other issue that I just wanted to mention is it's really minor in comparison to everything else, but one of the things I see all the time where I live right on High Street is, and it's coming into spring, so the sweeper goes out. And they never, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, put up the signs of no parking because the sweeper will be there. So they'll run up and down the same route many times, but the cars are there. So I've asked, I've brought this up many times over the years. It would be so much easier if there was just signage and you just got the cars off the road that particular time you're gonna do it, instead of going around and around and around. So it happens in the spring, it happens in the fall. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention as well. It's very common. I see it all the time.
So, and you're right, you're absolutely right. There's nothing worse than when you see the sweeper marks go around the car, or it's just fruitless. But those emergency no parkings, we use them for road jobs, construction, and the police are very good about enforcing, but they do have to be up 24 hours prior to when they'll actually enforce them. But they're supposed to do that, and I know they have done it at times, other times they haven't, but and I think the reason for that is when we can plan in advance, we're gonna sweep, those signs will go out, we'll get them out of there. But sometimes it's one of those where, we have work assignments, we're trying to catch up on this, or an emergency comes up here, so you're a little behind. And then when you get a little bit of time, because they know that the administrator wants sweepers. How many times have we discussed this? He wants the sweepers out. So the foremen are very good. If they get some downtime, they're like, sweepers are going out. But unfortunately, when it's not planned in advance like that, you can't put the no parking signs out. So I think you'll see this spring, there'll be a lot more instances of no parking for sweeping. And especially when we start and we get closer to 4th of July, I think you'll see everything done that way.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the council? I will tell you for myself, I've heard what impressed me most of the presentation, not only from you, but from others yesterday and today, is the majority word we hear is we, not I did, we did, and my people did. And the pride that we hear about our departments and the people that work for the town. We don't say it enough. We can never say it enough, but we bring it up a lot, that we have good people that work for the town. We talk about the quality that's in this town hall, but there's a lot of people that work for the town, and we're very, very fortunate. And we have no problem saying thank you as many times as we possibly can. And the we is the reoccurring theme that this council appreciates. So
well, I appreciate that, because there are some, like I said, I didn't come here because I wanted to be a DPW director and I was waiting. I came here because the administrator and I discussed, I was here already and I loved it. But the real reason is there's a lot of dedicated people and there's some talent out there. And all they want to do is take on a bigger role and they all live in Bristol. There's probably one person down there, other than myself, who doesn't currently live in Bristol. And there's a lot of pride and they care about what they do. There's a lot of talent too. These guys who can do a lot and they're just looking for the opportunity. So thank you for mentioning that. They do appreciate it.
Chris, thank you. Tony?
Just very quickly, at the beginning, when I says we, okay, was we came a long way from the playgrounds. Okay, it was not he came. We played, that was back then when we worked for recreation. So it was we.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is 604, which is water pollution control, 604.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see everyone.
Have you
Certainly
been,
a different environment from the past.
do you have an employee that was unhappy with you? Do you know what happened with?
I myself needed maintenance.
Ah,
Finally caught up with me.
12, 13 years, that's all you can get, and then it's,
Yeah, but it's, one thing was it, sleep deprivation. Can't get comfortable.
I hope you're okay, all joking aside. So as you've done many times before, Jose, if you could hit the highlights, anything that you want us to draw our attention to, and after that, I'll open it up to questions, please.
The highlight is the department is big. It's all town encompassing, 90 miles, actually a little bit more of collection system pipes out there, 11 pump station, the facility itself and all the equipment, and then the yard waste pickup to bring up to the transfer station where we have our compost facility. So there's really three big parts: the collection system, the processing at the facility, and then the processing at compost. And those have some big equipment, big projects. We have currently, we've been replacing the RBC units, 24 when we started that 10 years ago, that you have for a lifespan of 10 years. We're going to be doing the final installation of the last two of that project in May, by the end of May. So we're already 10 years into it, so another 10 years will probably be replacing those. We got as time has gone on and we've had improvements and more equipment and such, the load on the electrical system there has been building up. We have a major electrical improvement to be done soon. We're getting ready for that contract. It's going to be a $1.3 million, I believe the price tag of that is estimated. We're getting hit by the EPA to improve our collection system, so we're going out with SRF money to go and do pipeline restoration in situ forming certain areas.
SRF, State Revolving Fund. Okay.
We're also doing, and we're getting hit by the EPA. To do, so actually, I'm sorry, DEM is hitting us up for solids handling, which that contract will be ballpark of 7 million. And
So let's stop if we may, because you just spent $8.3 million.
It's a cost.
You asked to put the brakes on that.
Yeah, so going back, and again, I like to say 10,000-foot view, we don't need to get into every nuance of it. But if you could just hit, please, because you brought it up, $1.3 million for improvements to electrical, and then the $7 million that you mentioned in regards to handling of solids.
And that may be broken up into two projects, $5.5 million that would need to go as a one unit to do solids handling, a new tank, solids handling tanks, and along with other improvements at the facility. The thickener tank being brought up, new pumps, a lot of miscellaneous equipment with this. This is being pushed forward by DEM to improve the product, as you can imagine, to meet.
It is what it is, right? This is what we do.
And as technology and science gets, you're testing tighter parameters, and to meet those parameters, you need to get this equipment in. So we're getting our hands a little forced to do this.
Can I assume that when we do these things, what's coming out of our water treatment plant is cleaner,
Much cleaner and
which is
so on.
better for the bay and the harbor. Okay,
You know, some areas they have to do denitrification, phosphorus removal. Fortunately, here in Bristol, we're not having to do that because of where we're located in the bay. But they do expect us to do improvements. So that is the main piece. The day-to-day operation, when you look at the line items we have here, the shuffling of some money, but no major increases per se. What we would have is our debt services because of the bigger projects. What you just had as a little bit of sticker shock.
it's a lot of it.
That would affect the rates.
You'll see when we discussed the debt
Enterprise
service
fund.
last night.
Yeah.
Those schedules have the enterprise fund debt listed as well, and that is all through Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank. Some of the projects that Jose mentioned, we had issued loans in 2020, so we are working off of close to $3 million in projects there. And then we have budgeted for another $6 million of loans from the state to handle those facilities, solid handling improvements, that 5 million portion. And then in the coming years, we'll do the next piece of that. So we're trying to break up the project into more manageable pieces so that we don't have such large hits to the sewer use fee. So that-
And that's where I know this council and this room knows this, but it's worth saying to the public is that these dollars come directly from the sewer use fee. So that sewer use fee encompasses cost of borrowing money, the payback of that money, the interest rate, and the daily runnings of the water treatment plant and all the pipes that you mentioned already, Jose, about 90 miles worth of pipe. So, okay. So specifically as it pertains to, I'm going to say, I know, and this all kind of melts together, but for 604 is what we're on right now. Is there questions? I'm sorry, I didn't want to stop you. Anything on this part of it that you'd like to go over that you haven't? Because I'd like to ask the council for questions. So council, questions on what, on 604?
I do have, just, I'm looking at the RBCs. Have we replaced all of those
We replaced 22. We have
out of 24?
out of 24. Last Friday was the installation of the 21st and the 22nd. We gotta give that time to, because the bugs will take time to repopulate. And then roughly 6 weeks from now, we will start on the final two. But the contract has a schedule that has to be completed by May.
Any other questions on 604?
I just had a quick question.
Please.
I hope you're doing all right. I'm better.
Thank you.
Good to see you. We had an issue in the past about those pump stations and blowouts in regards to it was like the cloths would find each
Oh,
other
yeah.
and they would create balls and then they would, is that still an issue? Or is
Wipes.
that way?
Wipes,
Wipes. The
Yes.
wipes. Thank you.
yes.
Actually, you brought it up. I
Yes.
remember it.
Well,
And
to that end,
Paul brought it up maybe.
Jose had shown me pictures, wipes find themselves
Yeah.
and they attach to themselves and they're not, but they're bulletproof and bulletproof. And when they go into our pumps, the pumps stop. That's how dense they are. And then we have broken pumps, which means things rise that shouldn't be rising. And then we have to do all of that. So, but a lot of the problem, and Jose, you can speak to this better than anyone else, is that it says flushable. Nothing is flushable except what is actually flushable. Toilet paper is flushable. Paper towels are not flushable. And wipes are actually thicker than paper towels. But if you are trying to do the right thing and you look at the side of the package that says flushable, it's a reasonable expectation that it is. It's not, and it ruins things. So
I was just curious if it was still happening quite a bit or not, because I know they're very expensive.
Well, the industry,
Repair.
the pump
That's a great point.
manufacturers, they made the impellers, they changed the design of it, they chopped them up a bit, passes them through
Okay.
and moves it along. It was 2 years ago, we had to do a pump station rehab.
Right.
We had to get brand new pumps, cost us $26,000. The pumps were just getting destroyed. And they were actually obsolete, those pumps. And the electronics had to be brought up, had to bring in VFDs, variable frequency drive. And it just cost us that amount of money to do it. We were fortunate that was at a smaller pump station, not a larger pump station. And then the other problem is, those wipes, they're meant to not disintegrate in your hands. They're strong. But a lot of our pipes in that 90 miles is age. They're over 50 years old, and a lot of them is clay pipes, and as they crack, they get an edge to them. So those wipes will catch on that and slowly begin to clog. And next thing you know, we're getting calls of my toilet's not flushing, and we're going out there for calls and stuff. We've actually been fortunate. During the whole COVID situation where people were flushing all kinds of things. Some communities, if you looked in the paper, they had some major problems. I know Warwick, they had an overflow, some basements, like 10, 15 homes got flooded out. We in Bristol, we had some minor stuff, but not to that level. We were fortunate. So we did some.
So you've seen an increase? I'm sorry, you've seen an improvement to Tim's question?
Yes, we did see an improvement. We did years ago, maybe 12 years ago, we got a new screener. And the best way to describe it, it's like an escalator. And we've all seen escalators. And what happens is.
I'm not going to ride that escalator. I'm
No,
sorry.
you don't want to ride that, but anyhow, as water comes, it traps those wipes and stuff. And it comes on automatically as the level of the water builds up, and it dries it out, and it's a 1/4 inch in diameter. So nothing larger than that will pass through. So we're collecting it, taking it out of there, and it made a great improvement.
Nice.
So the technology's out there, but it's not cheap technology.
That's great. That's great. And I just had one other question, it was just in regards to the chemicals, and it looks like $10,000 additional.
Yes, $10,000.
Curious why the constant escalation in that area.
Well, we just recently got, because of the cost of fuel going up, the rise of polymers, a 5% increase on the polymer we use to bind the materials so we can filter it out.
What?
Polymer?
Polymer.
Okay.
What it is, we add it
It's a
to.
thickening agent.
Exactly. And
Ew.
that allows us to de-water.
No, it takes the stuff that's in the water and it makes it combined like the wipes do.
Yeah.
And that way they can take it out of the water. And I'm sorry, Jose.
Those costs will increase. One of the projects that we have is the sodium bisulfite. Right now, the way we get it from distributors in 55-gallon drums. And we go through that quite a bit. We doing a better distribution. We got a building coming in. We're gonna be doing those totes in 350 gallons. So we don't have to worry about swapping them out. There should be corresponding cost savings, and it'll just be safer for everybody, because as you change those barrels out, you need a mask, you need ventilation, and so on. But
So you're saying buy bigger and we're able to save because of it?
yes, we're going to be changed.
And really, there's no other alternative chemicals out there.
No,
Just as effective
without
or-
changing it,
but- yeah.
without changing your whole entire process.
Got it.
And then you
Okay.
get that whole capital investment.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to reference the last line in the sewer department's budget. It's been here for 2 years, and that's the inflow and infiltration. And I'd like to make a public service announcement that there is funding available for homeowners that may have a groundwater connection to the sewer system. So a sump pump that's connected into the sewer system, they can get up to $1,000 from the town in the court to reimburse them for the cost of disconnecting that and putting that groundwater into a dry well or redirecting it onto their property somewhere. One of the EPA and DEM mandates is that we eliminate, as Joe said, the inflow and infiltration of fresh water into the system, because we have to treat that and use chemicals. And so if anyone,
How does, if someone's interested in doing such a thing, how would they how would they apply for that $1,000?
Just call the sewer department. What's the number?
253-8877.
What's the number again?
253-8877. But no, it has been.
That's a great point.
Project, and thank you for bringing that up. I forgot that. We have been ongoing trying to eliminate that source of water, that extra INI, just so the public knows. It's like Christmas Day. We didn't have a white Christmas, we had a rainy Christmas. And our flow at that point, prior to that rain, was 3.5 million gallons. By Christmas night, we were up to 12 million gallons.
Wow.
And that was just that amount of rainfall that was getting into the system through age piping, cracks in the pipe, but also some pumps, downspouts that were connected, those type of things. And the sewer department has been engineered to have a daily flow for the population, but when you increase that flow, you're not getting the proper treatment. And I think everybody, well, a lot of people remember how after every heavy rainstorm, we had shellfish closing. And that was the reason why, because this wasn't treated properly. So the EPA is on us to do something about that. And one of the things that we've now done is we've allocated some money to help people who have, as the administrator said, connections of their sump pump going into the plumbing, which sends that water to us. And we really shouldn't be treating it. It should be in the stormwater system.
Got it.
Drainage
So
system.
in essence, we're treating fresh water and we shouldn't be.
Exactly. And
Got
that's
it.
just a cost, and it's,
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Minister?
I'm sorry, but just one last point, and just an overview of the department. The majority of the increase for the department, almost all of it, is through the projects, and that's the bonds that were issued. And those are all mandated projects, and we're in full agreement that they need to be done, and we're actually excited and proud about them. Jose mentioned that big ticket item, which is could be up to $7 million of solid handling. And to what Jose was just saying, when it rains and there's a huge inflow of water, the sediment at the bottom of the tanks gets washed through the system and it ends up in Bristol Harbor. So this solids handling project is going to be a huge benefit to us in reducing those overflows that we get when it rains heavily. So it's expensive, but it's money well spent. So again, the budget, the operations of the budget were very slight, but the debt service for these large projects, which are unavoidable, that's where the expenses are.
Well, and to that end, and we're going to continue moving forward here. We've spent some, as we all know, we spent a lot of money recently at the sewer treatment plant to make sure that that fresh water, that just normal runoff coming from the woods, because it's just normally what happens. That money that we've spent to make sure that we're not dealing with those overflows. And how has that worked out? Just real
it's been
quick.
working beautiful.
Wonderful. Because I know it was,
That very same rainstorm that I referenced on Christmas Day, that area was just draining beautifully.
wonderful.
We talking about specifically Fairview and the project that was out
Yes.
in the surrounding area.
Yeah, yeah.
Good, glad to hear that.
Anything else on 604?
Brought that up.
Okay, so we're gonna move next to 606, which is compost facility, 606. And again, Jose, I would say anything, this is you, right?
Yes.
So just the issues or highlights that you'd like us to focus on. If there isn't anything particular, then I'll just open it up for questions. So,
Well, we got one other project coming up, an electrical improvement area that'll be coming up. March
Please.
forward.
please.
Electrical improvements at the facility. It was built on a landfill and there's been some settling problems. We do need some work to be done there. One of the things I also had managed to get was a bond, 50% bond and for a generator up there. We are in the process, we spoke to the state. We're gonna see about upsizing that so that we can also incorporate it into running the transfer station. That's something that we're looking to do. Of that electrical upgrade and some other miscellaneous things to be done up there. Other than
You said bond, did you mean a grant?
a grant.
Okay,
There was a resiliency grant that the state had put out there. I had put 3 projects together, one to make the Ferry Road pump station more resilient to storms because it's so close to the waterfront. A backup pump, just that we can utilize it at the pump stations if needed, at the facility itself, at the main station also. The one that we currently have is close to 50 years old. It still functions, but it's on, it's open. So, and it's 50%, 50 cents on the dollar for that. And then also the generator at the compost facility. And that's the major project there. Down the road, there was some equipment that we're gonna need. We still got some years to go on that. That's the major.
Mr. Chairman, one other point, you're gonna see that the compost bags, the 13,000 was
say that.
zeroed out, but that was transferred to move to DPW. Most people, are only a handful of people that actually went to the sewer department. So the bags, lawn bags are still available to the public. There's no mock-up on them. So what we get them for, that's what we sell them for, and they're at DPW.
Excellent.
And they're currently available.
Thank you. I was going to hit on that topic. Counsel?
Went somewhere.
I'm gonna get rid of that.
Yeah, I know.
So 606, what questions do you have, counsel, if any? All right, hearing none. Jose, anything that you wanted to hit on this thus far?
No,
Okay. Don't move, because we're going to 607. It's primarily Julie, but I'm sure that if there's a question in relation to you, then, all right, so we're on 607, which is the enterprise fund. Julie?
So this section of the budget has the enterprise fund debt service and then fixed charges such as retiree medical dental, life insurance, annual audit fees,
Julie,
liability insurance.
sorry, would you remind the public what an enterprise fund is in this instance? Excuse me, an enterprise fund?
So enterprise funds are set up when you have a business-like activity where you're charging fees to fund all of the operations and expenditures of the business that you're running. So in our case, it's running the sewer department and the compost facility. And so the town, the enterprise fund pays the general fund a little bit of overhead fees, so for us to run payroll and pay bills and things like that. And we also have the insurances, workers' comp, property and liability, those that are applicable to the enterprise fund get charged to the enterprise fund. So it's a different type of funds than the general fund because it's not funded to taxpayer dollars.
Thank you.
We discussed the debt service, and if there are any other questions in this budget, I'm happy to answer.
I don't think so, but counsel, any questions on this? No? Please.
In regards to Julie, it would be mainly for you, is for the fees at the compost center. Are they adequate for the enterprise fund? Are we seeing?
Yes.
Because I know we increased them.
Yes, so the way the fees are developed is we take all of the expenditures that are required to run the operation.
Yeah.
And then we take the number of what they call equivalent residential units. I have that right? And
What was that? Sorry. I couldn't-
equivalent residential units, it's how we assess how we charge the fees for, based on usage in homes.
Okay.
And so.
How much you flush your toilet?
The price of making it go away.
It is what it is.
Data from the water authority to develop those numbers. So in any case, you do a calculation based on what all of your expenditures are to know how much you need to charge the residents to fund the operation. So that's why you see an increase is directly related to any increases in expenditures you have over the year, unless you had some other revenue source that came in, which we really did not. We have some small revenue sources.
Right. Now, with that solar farm, will that be?
That
Put
is
into-
part, that will actually come into the general fund, not
General,
into
okay,
the
okay.
enterprise fund. Yeah, because that was part of the old landfill, which is a different operation that's. Private.
And
Well, I
Tim,
keep track of.
to that point,
Keep track of.
on our next agenda, our council agenda, which we won't get into particulars right now, but there should be a proposed change in the fees for compost and minor.
Never mind.
But to
That's
that
what I
end,
was-
that's one of those things that adjusted, absolutely. So,
So, and Mr. Chairman, that sewer fee, right, is not just for the toilets and everything, flushing the toilets and drainage of water. It'd be for the compost pickup and everything like that too, right?
Yes, all yard
Yes.
waste pickup
So,
is included in that as well.
It's a great point.
It's something I always forget about, you know, I'm
Yes.
always thinking about the
And it's-
drainage of the water and everything
Because
like
it's
that, but
intimately
that,
connected to the processing of the sludge that comes out of the treatment facility.
and then the name sewer fee, you know. so.
And to your point, Aaron, the people, the men, I think it's just men, right? That pick up on that particular part of it, are from our sewer department. So the guys that pick up the compost bags are part of the sewer department. So it's all in that same thing. So, anything else from the council? Anything from you, Jose? You've had 3 times to share stuff here. But we hope you feel better. Covering well.
Take care now.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Yes. Have a
See
good one.
you. Take care.
Yes.
What was the enterprise fund paid to the town for, what was? what
That
did you
line
use?
that's allocated costs,
Yeah,
it's for overhead charges such as the cost of running the payroll, the time the administrator takes in running the, the town, that part of the town's operation, all of our, bills paid.
I was just interested in the terminology.
Oh, yes, overhead.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
All right, so last night we were extremely efficient. So we covered municipal observances last night. So we're on to 802, which is Rogers Free Library, 802. Feel free to walk quite slowly. We'll wait for Councilman Perrella to come back. So make yourself at home. Feel free to find a comfortable place on the chair.
Well, this is also an opportunity to see him in person.
That's right.
Last time we saw him via Zoom,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, it's nice to see everybody in person.
Yeah.
Welcome report. Thank you.
Director, does everyone have any, does anyone have any overdue library books here?
Not as far as you know.
I think Mr. Texera has an overdue book.
Yeah.
Can you get a fake library?
I saw him my old card with the little metal tab on it. I do.
Oh, yes.
Remember those?
Yes. Yes.
He's gonna look into it.
Yes. And Mrs. Fails would check you out, right? So-
Lady of Mount Carmel? Mrs. Sales?
No, like Fails Farm?
Oh,
Yeah.
I was thinking Mrs. Sales. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I remember going there with those little tabs.
I'll bring you back, huh?
Upstairs, he used to go upstairs.
Yeah, and you would run, the little metal was for them to run through the skin, so it would pick up the number, your number.
Kind of like an old credit card machine, right?
Yeah, it was. You probably need one of you remember that, right? The little metal.
Okay,
I'm trying to think,
we've digressed enough. So back to 802, which is Rogers Free Library. Director, welcome. Nice to see you in person, has been said by my colleagues, all right? If you could, and you've heard it a couple of times, but we are masking down when you're speaking. You can leave yours off because it's so much more convenient. If you could please hit the salient points that you'd like to, highlights, lowlights, anything, and then we're not going to go through each line item. Just hit the points that you'd like to share with us or bring to our attention, and then I'll open it up to my colleagues for questions.
Okay. Yeah, so the thing I want to do first is just to commend the staff actually on doing such a great job with dealing with this transition and still trying to provide a certain level of service while we're dealing with all this, still doing programming weekly, whether it's story times for the kiddos or job series for adults. So I'm really been impressed in my first few months working with them and seeing their dedication to the community. I think another department had mentioned about how many people that work there actually live in Bristol, so they really care a lot about it. And it's obviously a very strange time, but it does feel nice seeing them interact with regulars and kind of, at least get a little bit of that library feel that I've definitely been missing. So I wanted to say that first. So the areas that I want to point your attention to primarily are the operating line and the Ocean State Library Consortium line. So last fiscal year, the Ocean State Library Consortium line, it was in operating, those two were merged.
And it was not funded last year at a high enough amount to cover those consortium fees. So that budget went over without anything kind of left for operating, which covers our supplies, especially this year. Town hall's been great actually in reimbursing us for a lot of our COVID materials, but of course, being a public building, you know, gloves and sanitizer and all that sort of stuff, we kind of go through it very quickly. So yeah, the operating line mostly covers our supplies, and Ocean State Library Consortium, if you're unaware what they do for us, they handle all of our networking, our integrated library system, so the online catalog in which you look up all your materials, place holds, everything that kind of has patron information in, you know, they completely manage that. If we have network issues, they help with that, a lot of training. And then of course, the interlibrary loan system throughout the state is all, and our ebook system is all funded through that. Yeah, the only other areas that I kind of want to bring attention to are some of the materials budget items. So we have a bit of an older collection. I did a little bit of an analysis. The average publication date of our adult print books is 2001. So of course, that doesn't tell the whole story. We have plenty of old books that we would never get rid of anyways, but you know, there is a little bit with replacements in the collection and the age of the collection and just getting sort of things current. The other big highlight is kind of our electronics line item, which is any of our database subscriptions. Right now, those are all funded through the state of Rhode Island, everything that we have. So we're missing a couple of things that I think would be really popular that neighboring communities have, whether it's streaming movies or supplementing our ebooks and things like that. And the other thing we have is LinkedIn Learning. If you haven't used it yet, our friends in the library have been gracious enough to fund that for 3 years. So that's covered out of their budget. But those are the major highlights, is really just collection and then Ocean State Libraries for operating expenses. As far as salaries are concerned, the big changes here is converting some of the part-time positions into a full-time adult services librarian position. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit at the workshop, so I'll be brief, but basically to cover our marketing and our programming right now, that responsibility is divided up from a number of different positions. So not only would that cover kind of those services and activities, it would also free up some other staff to, you know, do more of what their specific job is. Circulation supervisor, I think, is a good example of that. You know, right now, on top of being a circ supervisor, she does cataloging and also does a lot of adult and teen programming. So this position would really be able to focus more on managing that department, working at that desk, taking care of issues that come up with circulation. So I think it you know, it covers multiple things by having this position. And again, it's not an addition in terms of salary, it's really a restructuring. And then the other two positions would still be 20 hours per week circulation associates cover. As you can see, there's a number of employees that have either retired or didn't come back due to COVID. So that's where those positions are kind of taking care of that. The other thing with this adult services position is their office would likely be up on the 3rd floor in reference. Our offices on each level are all glass, which is great. I talked a little bit at the workshop about you know, needing 2 people per floor. So even if the 3rd floor reference isn't super busy, you know, we still have that second staff member there that could be backup while they're still kind of taking care of their own tasks. So I think that helps with staffing as well. But yeah, those are the major changes. So happy to answer any questions.
Council?
So I don't see. This is another page. On the printed materials
Mhm.
and the electronics, if you're level funded, are you trying to make a case asking for more? Is that it?
Yeah.
An increase?
Yeah, if you look at the departmental requests, that's where I had asked for increases. Yeah, mainly to bring us, I guess, more in line with libraries of similar size, but also working on updating a lot of our older materials. And then as far as the electronic resources, you know, to get a brand new database is anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000. So of course, $4,000 funding would be eaten up right away.
Could you, maybe it's in here, could you provide us with, I mean, if we were to put that as a question,
Mhm.
could you provide us in the next day or so, a list of what those wish list items would be?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Would that be okay, Mr.
Of
Chairman?
course it will. So
Yeah, I
your
can definitely do
specific
that.
question would be electronic equipment, library electronic equipment breakdown?
And print materials, if to come back to those at the end, but in the meantime, if they could send us like what's on the list of things that they would like, and what the costs are.
So I'll put electronic and printed,
Right. I think the
wish
mostly, I
list?
think that,
How's that?
yes, I think it's mostly the electronics that
Yeah,
would
so
be the
the
wish list. The rest is
printed-
like printed materials.
Yeah,
just-
a printed materials wish list would be quite.
everybody okay with that?
Mhm.
Council?
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
great.
Wish list from library.
So what's in question there is the 12 to 4, am I correct?
And then 35 to 25. They were both level funded, but they requested more, and that's the point, is what he's highlighting.
Okay,
So like that would include like, sorry, that would include like databases, like learning materials in them and
Yes.
things like that, like access to academic journals and that.
Yeah, so we have a fair amount of kind of traditional school academic things covered through Ask RI, which is the statewide consortium. There's a lot of other areas where we're missing. Ebooks are kind of the big one. Our usage for the consortium greatly outstrips the amount of money we actually pay into it. And I think a lot of that has to do with how we don't have really any alternatives aside from the statewide consortium.
Can people access those databases from home?
Most of them, yes. So there's different funding models depending on where you can access it. For example, ancestry.com, probably one that everybody knows. We're lucky enough that Providence Public is funding that for the state right now, and it's allowing access from home because of COVID. But typically that's a database they only allow in library use only. So most of them you can access from home, but it depends on some of them in terms of pricing.
what other questions for the director?
Not for the director, but I think I know the answer to this, because everybody's is very specific. But in almost every department, we've heard the need to upgrade IT and databases. And I don't know if there's a way to combine them somehow and get a better price. I know that they're specific to like the department, so that may not be possible, but I just wonder if there's any way of doing that, because, everybody's mentioned it.
To your point, Mary, last year's budget, we spoke about specifically with the library and talking about tech support and Freedom Tech, thank you. Freedom Tech does it for the town, and the town started using Freedom Tech initially with the police department. So their capabilities and their level of, we'll call it compartmentalization, I don't think I could say that twice, is just outstanding. And it would seem to me that if they can do it for the police department, where records are infinitely more important than probably anything else that we do, or pretty close to anything else that we do, that we could find, to Mary's point, a way to compartmentalize. I did it twice. So for the library to make sure that they're hands off and hit the requirements. And I know it was talked, the council we were shared that information that it had to be a specific way. I see this, we heard DPW, again, to Mary's point about IT upgrades. The clerk had mentioned to us yesterday with a firm that we used to use for the whole community. They're an outstanding firm and they're nice people too. Maybe there's an opportunity there with them. So to encompass all of this, and again, to all of our points, is if we can find some savings there, maybe that savings can be used to fund electronics, or we have other questions that we want to go back to. So I would implore you to go back and say, we want to use, how do we do it? Not can we? You know what I'm saying? And I know that we've offered this in the past. And again, to Mary, because you brought it up, there's an opportunity here. I couldn't agree more. And I think it's reasonable that the people that we have could help and make sure that we help in a way that is appropriate to the guidelines that you need to hit.
And I think our buying power, if we're going to upgrade in different departments, would be even cheaper.
That makes a lot of sense.
You know,
What I was
right?
because you're not just buying a few here, a few there, you're buying 60 or 70 laptops and now you're upgrading the library.
I think it's mostly the systems. I think it's more the IT and the programs. Is that what it is? Like,
Yeah.
and they're all specific to that, but I mean, the police, I think, talked about upgrading, if I remember. And then, the clerk's office, your office, DPW.
Right.
I mean, there's been at least 4 departments, maybe more, that we have.
Chris spoke about it yesterday and improvements that we've made and
Yeah.
continue
Yeah.
to need to make. So I
I mean,
think
it may not
there's,
be possible. It's worth checking into, I guess, is that, or part of it is. I mean, obviously, they think the library systems need and whatever, but if it can be done, it would be, it would improve our buying power and it would give us a lot more coordination, maybe.
We're actually in pretty good shape in terms of purchasing actual equipment in terms of compute, because we have a buying arrangement with all of Ocean State Libraries. So we actually just pay Ocean State Libraries and they use their joint purchasing agreement with Dell in order to get us really deep discounts on any PCs and laptops that we purchase. But yeah, you're right. It comes down to, our databases of patron information, our networking with the rest of the libraries in the state. Those are the things that I would have to talk to them about and have us get past those kind of pain points more than anything else, I think.
Well, even if there's some general management stuff that you're not doing that is farmed out to them, and then you only have to buy a small piece of something, for that's very specific.
Right.
perfect. So we'll put that question down and if you could come back to us
Yeah,
with,
I will do some research.
and what's necessary, because if it's currently not in a place that it can, what's it take to? And we're open to that dialogue for overall cost savings here. So, anything else for the library?
Yes. On the employees, I'm looking here and you have currently, 26, proposed 28 to additional positions, because it says new employees. Am I correct in that?
They're actually, so the positions haven't been filled, but more so they're replacements of these vacant positions that are right underneath them.
Okay. And I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 somewhat major adjustments in salaries. Okay, there are 10 of them, not 1, not 2, but 10 of them. Are those increase of hours or increase in salary?
Those are all hours related. The only increase in terms of salary was the 2% recommendation from their current salaries.
But so if you increase in this amount of hours for these individuals, you're still going to need 2 new employees?
Yes. I'm actually, and maybe the treasurer can speak to this, I'm not quite sure with some of the, I guess, lower costs from 2019 to 2020. I guess I'm not 100% positive on what their hours look like or why that adjustment was
The
made.
way those numbers were developed, I don't know last year, but I can speak to the prior years. I would meet with the previous director as well as her, what's the title, deputy, maybe, Kathleen Govern, yep, assistant. And they would provide me with a listing of all of the employees and the number of hours they worked and the hourly rates. And then we would provide them with recommended increase. And so I would assist them in developing worksheet for what the cost was based on the hours worked. But it was always a difficult process for them because the hours would fluctuate and sometimes we would be taking averages and then, some people are reducing and some increasing. So the library salaries has always been a little bit more complicated by nature of the number of employees there and the varying schedules.
So I know you, just to stay on that and
Right.
please continue, but I wasn't clear. I understood that. But just to your end, it sounded, your question, I didn't hear clarity to.
You're right, I did not, because I'm still a little confused because there's 10 employees, okay, even though you may be short, and I'm looking at 26 employees, not counting the other 2. So there were some major adjustments made on salary, and you tell me that's because of hours. So if you increase all of those 10 employees, they were increased in our time, so you actually have additional labor time on your hands now. So I'm not seeing why there's a need for 2 additional employees.
Sure. So I believe it's 1, 2, 3.
And I know there's a bit of a shuffle. I remember when I worked in McDonald's, we also had the overlap shifts and all of that, and I remember budgeting allocating those. So I'm just a little unsure how you would need 2 additional employees.
So right now, there's 8 vacant positions.
Right, I see that.
Right. So those 8 positions would be replaced by 1 full-timer and the 2 part-timers, in terms of, so the full-timer, their responsibilities are actually quite different from a part-timer in terms of working a public service desk and what they actually do. So the 2 part-timers would be there for desk coverage, to cover our circulation and reference desks, and cover that staffing. So the other thing right now is we're not open at the moment at our typical hours. Like, we're only open 1 evening a week. We're not open for all of Saturday. So reaching that 60 hours per week that we're required to be staffed, that's where that adjustment comes from.
I'm gonna ask a direct question. Why aren't you open? And it would sound like, well, because of COVID, but certainly most everything else is open, and that sounds like I'm fighting with you, and I'm not. I'm looking for clarity. Is that because the town hall and other departments are? Why wouldn't the library at this point? I certainly understand prior to that, but why not now?
Right. So when I started working, we were actually in the pause. So I didn't make any changes at the moment.
Okay.
So right now, it really comes up to making sure that we have the staff to maintain the hours. Already started discussions about extending the Saturday hours. And then the rest of the decision-making process has really been about traffic. We're getting a lot more people using electronic resources or coming into the library to pick up holds and then leaving. Because we're still under the restrictions that you can only spend a half hour in the library if you're not using a computer for something before you have to leave, just for safety's sake. So that's the reasoning behind that in terms of the hours. Like Wednesday nights, we're open right now until 8 o'clock at night, and it's just very thinly used on weeknights at the moment.
So and if I may, Tony, because I knew you were on
I started.
go ahead, then I'll come back after you ask,
If you don't mind.
because you had the floor.
Thank you. This one is for Julie. In regards to active medical, okay, I'm looking at it and there was probably a bump there. When we bumped, it's an increase of 22,000.
Because of
Which is
the,
46.
I think that would be the new full-time position, you might have a little fluctuation with changes in coverage, but a new plan is typically about $20,000, so you'll see a big spike if there's a.
And that was also would apply to the dental, which I would say,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It seems like we've seen that across the board too, right?
Well, you're seeing changes, and I think that's because we've had a lot of staffing changes in the departments, and so anytime you have a lot of turnover one way or the other, you'll have differences in plans. So somebody has a family plan, somebody has a single plan, and the health insurance plans are very pricey. So there's a big difference between a family plan and an individual plan.
Thank you.
If I may,
Go ahead, Mr.
Director,
Administrator.
we had met and we talked about the, at length, and you had provided me some documentation on staffing last year versus this year versus next year. And my question is, you're open 60 hours a week, then that's what you're budgeting for here,
That's
for
correct.
60 hours a week. You explained to me in the past that you have a minimum staffing to each day, each time you're open, you're required to have so many employees there.
Mhm.
Do you remember what it
It's
was?
2 people per floor.
Okay, and then you add the librarian, you add some of the staff people in there. So if you would just, what do you think it is for personnel a day?
Oh, how many in a given day? Well, at the moment, I would say we're at about 14 a day.
Okay,
But yeah.
I won't hold you exactly that number. I know we had gone through it. So 14 a day this current year, that's what you run with when you're open. You need to have 14 people a day.
You don't need to, at the moment. There's definitely some reduction. But in normal, well, Yeah, right now I would say it's still 14 because of all the full
Okay,
timers.
so you're budgeting for 14 this current year. To simplify this question about supplementing part-time people for full-time, are you adding any additional hours in this coming budget?
No, these are replacing
It's a swap.
positions.
So we are not adding, and this was, we met at length in what he produced to me at the time.
Thank you for that clarity, because that is not the way it looks. I'm not saying you proposed it that way, but I was kind of going down the road that Councilman Texera was, that I was, well, why do we need the extra? And that clarity so what was just said was shuffling employees from part-time to full-time. At the end of the day, we are not adding hours. We're just taking those hours and taking a part-time employee, make them full-time, shuffling things around for a net zero additional gain. Is that what it was said? Wow. Okay.
One other point, and this goes back to our library workshop. One point that the director made was that the full-time personnel can now oversee the floors from their offices. So if there is a vacancy and one of the circulation staff members is out, they can.
Coverage can happen from there. Gotcha.
So that's
Okay.
one of the benefits of having that staff person.
Thank you for that
with the
clarity.
glass offices.
Okay.
I'll settle for now.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't have.
You want some clarity? Okay.
I don't have the sheet, unfortunately, they provided, they forwarded to us with the stipulations, the regulations, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And I had the opportunity and I made some notes and I thought I had included in here, but obviously I didn't, because that would have clarified things a little bit more.
Okay.
You know, as to the requirements, you know. It doesn't really state, I'm hearing 2 people per floor, that's what has been sort of the practice, but it is really not a requirement if you read the regs.
Right, so this is from our
So
specific
that's why-
building safety perspective as opposed to state regulations. in terms of,
Exactly.
For floor staff. Yeah,
Okay, because there is quite a difference, you know, a practice versus regulation.
sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for the director?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay. Director, anything for us?
Nothing further.
So I'll say it again for this council and the town is that it's outstanding to have a budget that is, and I know we have a couple of questions, but all in all, very lean and efficient. And also the same holds true. I said it about DPW for this council and I meant it for water pollution. I mean it for the library too. We're truly fortunate. My neighbor, Dave Dugan and Judy Dugan. Yeah, I just said their names. Hi, Dave and Judy. They speak very highly of their experiences at the library, and they are certainly not alone with that. So, outstanding job, and it's worth saying that enough and saying thank you.
I'm looking forward to having all the people back in the building again, so I can start introducing myself.
I actually exist, right?
Yeah.
So, excellent. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next on our budget agenda is 803, which is Parks and Recreation. Tim? How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Excellent. You've got the memo. You took your mask off. Excellent. So
Been waiting.
I know you've been here for a while. I know, isn't it? It may be the small table, but it's good stuff. Could you just highlight or draw our attention to whatever it is that you'd like us to look at? And then once we do that, we'll open up for questions.
Sure. First, I want to take the time to, listen to some of these other presentations to just talk about the last year briefly. And it was a different year for all of us, but especially within the Parks and Recreation Department. Parks don't close. It was difficult for us at that, very early on to have to put caution tape to keep people from gathering on basketball courts or playgrounds. It's everything we're against, and we're excited to start, opening things up. We're proud of what we did at that community center there. It's not just for programming and fitness programming and a lot of the different things we did. It truly is a community center. And I think the
everyone in the town, if not the state, saw that in the last 6 months with what we've done there. Whether it was distributing food out of there or being the central location for the vaccinations and being the call center. So we're very proud.
You should be proud.
Thank you.
You should.
When it comes to our budget, you'll see a lot of it is, anything you might see are very minor increases because we're trying to keep up with, we do have a lot of seasonal staff that work for us, I think, more than maybe any of the other departments here in town. So as minimum wage continues to increase, we're kind of chasing that. And, we're fortunate that, especially with our summer camp, we have a lot of returning staff to the point, they might start with us when they're 16, 17. And then we have teachers that are working with us that are, young professionals that enjoy the job so much. It's not about the pay to them. It's about that, giving this great experience to the youth here in Bristol. So for us, any of the increases that you'll see here that might rise a little bit will be when it comes to the beach and the beach management. So it's kind of a blessing and a curse for us to be connected to Polk State Park because we do everything we can to manage that beach and that parking lot, but we cannot stop people from accessing the ocean. So if they, I was seeing people taking coolers last year to the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot where Ace is over there because of the limited parking. They were trying to get to the beach any which way. Even with the restricted parking, we have to have personnel that are at the gate at the main lot. We're putting personnel at the gravel lot. We have a beach manager that's circulating around. And we also need to start being considerate to the lifeguards and how we do that and doing a rotation. Because when you're sitting on that lifeguard stand even for 20 minutes in that hot sun, we have to get a rotation where they're up, they're down, where they're up, they're down. With that, we're following guidance from the DEM program and also Rhode Island, the Rhode Island to Local Trust with in partnership with the American Red Cross, who, they're coming, they're inspecting us, they're giving us advice on what we're doing. So we're trying to keep up with that, and we're trying to maintain what we have going on with that beach and keeping it safe and managing as best as we can.
Any item that you wanted to particularly focus on? I know that for myself, I think I know what the answer is already, but I would like to talk about salaries real quick. And I think take a moment and ask you, Tim, or the administrator, that we were thinking of Sarah. How's that? So, and Tim, you do an excellent job, but we're certainly thinking good thoughts for Sarah. So,
Yeah, we know her.
Yeah.
And she told me to say hello.
Good. Well, we said hello back. So. I understand she just wasn't feeling her tip-top self,
So with the salary here, we do have the ask here where we asked for the 16.6 to fully, in our opinion, we were asking to try to cover when our maintenance, head of maintenance is off. There's a lot that we expect of him. He's pulling 8-hour days. He does do some overtime on the weekends, but it's still, there needs to be additional support there. On the peak times of the year, when we're getting things ready, we're getting ready to start painting real soon. And you'll start seeing the gazebo getting painted and getting the parks, spruced up for the spring. And we're upon that. So, and it's also covering the time when the director of maintenance here, the maintenance supervisor is taking time off. So when he has vacation, we really have nobody in place. So we're just asking for those hours to be covered to make sure that none of that is being missed.
Council?
I'm not seeing what
It
line.
would
you're
be
in.
part-time maintenance.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just have a quick question. I think it might have to do with the state. The town beach booth, I noticed that the revenues are 50% less. Is there an explanation for
We had
that?
to restrict parking last
Oh.
year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And that's gonna go into this year as well, you're
We hope not.
anticipating?
You know, I know everybody that I've talked to has the intentions. There's been some communities that have, you know, during over the winter have already said, you know, we're gonna only be for our residents, or we're gonna restrict this to 25% non-residents, 75% residents. So we're gonna follow whatever guidance is out there from the state, from the town, and from CDC. So if we can open up those parking lots safely and get everyone in there, that's what we're gonna do. And we are taking advantage of that gravel lot. So we're trying to,
Yeah, by the bike path. Yeah, I have to apologize. I read that backwards. I thought you were anticipating 35,000 for this year, but we're actually anticipating 70,000 for this fiscal year in terms of the town beach group.
it is, and
Yep, okay.
So Aaron, and also kind of Tim's question earlier in regards to fees that had to do with compost. There's also at our next meeting, a proposed fee change for parking too. It hasn't been adjusted in multi-years.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so you should see that, and that should also see increases too. Reasonable, of course, in keeping with resident, non-resident. Nobody's gonna feel like they can't go there. So.
Well, during this pandemic, when it kind of, hit the fan, I guess you could say, that town beach is where we went, and we brought scooters down there and everything like that, just so the kids could, play around in the parking lots and everything like that. So it was kind of a sanctuary for us to some extent during this time that we were experiencing something for the very first time. And it was really strange to us. We had a familiar place to go and be outside. So we enjoyed our time at the with the Parks Department this year.
happy to hear. I think that location we have down there has a lot to offer. I don't know anywhere else that has it.
Anyone else in the council?
Tim, and also, I just have a question, Chairman.
Please.
Tim, I just had a question about the coordinator of senior services. So it's a new position that I believe we brought on, Julie, right, last year, or the last budget. How are things going there and expanding, and you seeing a lot of that?
It's going great. Through this pandemic, that was a very important position for us.
Okay.
When we became a call center, she worked directly with Chief DeMello throughout getting set up, and also with Chris helping us out to get everything set up here in town for people to get on that wait list, and for that Parks and Recreation number to be the one that people called, and they still continue to call, asking questions. And what's great is that we answer the phone. And a lot of people are kind of shocked by that, the way that they're trying to get through. But Mary Ann Quinn is the woman that's in that role, and she's doing a great job. And it couldn't have been better timing to have had her there. And she had already had a lot of great contacts, in the community, having worked with us part-time previously. And now, we have people, when they're calling, they're not calling. A lot of times people before would call our department and just ask a question. It might be a general question. They're calling specifically, can I speak to Mary Ann, please? A lot of us can answer the question that they have, but they want to talk to her. So, she's building relationships, and she's got a lot of great ideas, and she's poking around at a lot of different opportunities that are gonna open up a little bit more of what we do at the community center.
Excellent.
On top of what we're already doing for some of the seniors here in town.
Well, I'm big fans of all of you, but I think, what I love about the Quinta building, Parks and Rec, if you guys are sort of the melting pot of everything in town and everything else that's outside as well. And you come in there, and I was really curious how that position was working out. And I, haven't heard anything bad. I've heard all good stuff. And I think that's also just going to be another senior place where seniors can go and exercise and, and age properly, and this could be a retirement town, which it seems to be coming with the numbers that are going with the lower enrollment. So anyway, I'm just happy to hear that's going well.
Can I just ask you, so what was your rationale for the nurse in the summer camp? Is it the ages, or is it COVID, or?
It was through COVID. So we've been fortunate for the last 4 or 5 years to have had nursing students working with us. It's a lot different when you have a school nurse. So what we ended up coming up with was, we were trying to figure out the best way to run our summer camp last year, which we pulled off and got away healthy with everybody that attended and worked for us. And a big part of that was the screening. So to have a professional there was important. So not only did we have, which are both, our staff are seniors this year, nursing seniors, nursing students. We also had 2 of the school nurses that worked the first week with us and then split. And all it was the first 2 hours. So they'd be there with us from 8 AM to 10 AM. They'd help us with screening as people came in. When they got to the booth, not only did they see Donna setting up in the morning, they would see myself and they would see the nurse. So we welcome them each morning, say hello, the nurse, nobody got out of a car until they were screened. Everyone had masks on. And during that portion of the morning, we followed their lead. And another thing that was great to us was they already knew about the tracing. So that would have been something, it's cumbersome enough running a summer camp, operating the beach, the community center. Then if we had it on us to be doing this tracing, if there were an issue at the summer camp, knowing that we had these people that were well versed in that available to us, that was part of the deal.
They're gonna continue that this year.
We'd like to this year because I think there are still some questions that are out there. We're confident in our plan and they're a big part of it.
What other questions?
In terms of the supervisors, community center supervisors, there's 3 of them, and they work from what time to what time?
Typically evenings and weekends. So we'll have programming, as we're gearing up. So that's another thing too, is through this pandemic, is we have a lot of creative staff and instructors that right off the bat, we started with Zoom. So we were doing programs via Zoom. Then when we had the opportunity, we were able to bring people in, and then there was the pause. And then starting last week, we started bringing people in again. So we're moving in that direction, getting back to fully open, we hope soon. So part of that is having our staff that are in that building when we have programs running sometimes till 10 o'clock at night. And those are those positions. And it's also them maybe checking in the morning, but it's having a staff member in that facility at all times that something's going on.
Okay, because we have you and Sarah, right, direct and assistant. Do you stagger your schedules or do you put them in the morning?
We do. So depending on the time of year, there'll be, I just
Right.
came up with.
Because summertime, you have to be there to
Correct. So Sarah, since she's been out, prior to that, I was on a 10 to 6 schedule. So it was me 10 to 6, and that's something that we've done since I've started here. And there were nights that I did nights. There were other positions that were in town. Marianne will cover nights, Marianne will cover weekends. But we have those times during the year where our focus is in other places other than that community center. So that's that support that we have there.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Tim, anything for us that you haven't covered? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Tim.
Actually, just, I don't want to forget the fat belly, the big bellies, what do we call them?
Big
You
belly.
heard that discussion earlier
I did.
with DPW.
And I do know Sarah's looked around, because we've talked about this also, trying to figure out how, because they are expensive.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out how can we get these things funded with grant money? And I know that's something that she has on her short list that she's been digging into.
I think it's important, and I'm sure there's some funds out there that it could be attached to, even if it's a handful of them in key spots.
Maybe some advertising on it. Somebody would help go in as a sponsor. If they could have a side of it to advertise or something, I don't know, but it would have to be appropriate, obviously, and in the town mission, it would have to be appropriate in a park area. So, something to think about.
It is. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Okay, so everyone, if you look at our agenda, we've gone through everything that we can go through. And you can correct me if you disagree. I will point out to you that we have 5 pending questions, one that we added this evening. And they included town clerk or the clerk's department, part-time, full-time position, town administrator contingency adjustment. Last night conversation, but that's with the 4th of July committee tomorrow. Part-time receptionist, And then, of course, we just added electronic and printed wish list for the library as a question. Unless you disagree and would like to do otherwise, I think most, if not all of these are an end of the budget discussion. And I'll remind everyone that Thursday will include capital projects, but it's not going to be an all encompassing because we're all familiar with it. And it's a progress of where we are, or status, I should say, of where we are, right?
Will some of the department heads be here I mean, like Chris made reference to it and, or is the administrator and Julie all
So
gonna talk about it?
I defer to the administrator and the treasurer. The question from Mary was department heads for capital project. Were they planning on being here for Thursday? So Chris
I
made
can
mention of
certainly
it.
invite them. Maybe what we do is invite them to listen in on Zoom, and if we have a question,
Yeah,
we'll.
I like
ask
it.
them.
Yeah.
Look at that
Especially
technology.
if there was especially if there's like a new initiative, like you talked about Chris pretty much covered it about the trucks. And I know, for Parks and Rec, I saw the, the common, the tennis courts upgrade and that issue. Just wanted to hear more
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, we're working on that. To utilize the tennis courts for more of a multi-purpose use court for pickleball and tennis. Yeah, the recreation is currently working on that. And, we did put that in capital. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's in there. I think it's the amount of money that goes into it as to what the plan is. So that might be good to have Tim there.
Okay.
Or at least be accessible, right?
Accessible,
Yeah,
yeah. The
absolutely.
Zoom is fine, yeah.
Okay.
Are we gonna discuss the sale of the Green property and where that money is going at some point?
We do. We
Okay.
actually will, I was thinking of moving that into April as part of our, maybe just a regular council meeting, because I think we've been very clear on where we wanted to go with. I don't want to go too deep because we're in advertised budget, but it's a great question that it is something that we want to focus on.
Perfect.
So-
As long as it's on the schedule.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm.
Absolutely. So, go ahead, Tony.
Just very quick, Mary, I hear you about the trash down there, although I've seen a great improvement because they've added additional buckets there. And I think that would be a solution because to go in the other direction, it's very expensive for the compactors. And right now with the additional buckets, I see the guys there every morning and they're going through. In weekends, all we can do is add a couple more to prevent that from happening. I agree with you. It gets to be a mess, but now with these new containers, it certainly would be a lot easier to control and also to pick up,
With the
So-
solar compactors, right?
No, it's gonna
well, I'm
go
No,
saying
what's already there.
Place up.
Oh,
because-
adding more, okay.
Add more containers, the blues and greens, down there. And I seen that, when George was in the morning, I see that and it's been helping a lot,
Well, I
I
think
mean-
if there's a way to find the money as part of a project,
Yeah.
or a grant, like at
Right.
least for certain key locations, I think, it might be down around the, like that location, maybe I haven't noticed a mess, but Maritime Center as something, as it gets busier, maybe.
That
there's
hasn't
like-
been bad there, but
No,
you're,
it hasn't been down the
no,
road,
yeah, Independence is,
So I think if there's a couple of, even if there's two or three, just to keep it in mind, because sometimes it gets overruling and it's so hard to know what will work. Obviously now the Dunkin' Donuts is gone, Hope Street
Right.
isn't as, like that was another big location. It
Yes,
was
it was.
really a mess
yes, it was.
Yeah.
by the bus station, by the bus stop over on the Bankside. Yeah, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Carol did call everyone on the human resources list
Outstanding.
tomorrow. And it
Outstanding.
sounded like most of them wanted to participate.
Okay, all right. So as, on that point, and we'll adjourn, is Human Services on Thursday.
Thursday.
And we had in the past, if we'd heard presentation and there was no appreciable differences, then we said, we consider it as valuable as we did in the past, kind of thing. So, right, so I don't think we need to go through each one. And if there are some that would like to share some salient points or differences, then certainly we're willing to listen, unless this council objects. So I just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Great. Nice job, everybody.
So Mary,